no, don't eat the books. No, eat the books, please. Hi everyone, my name is Hannah, and this struggling beast is Ori. He's so cute, but he's not happy. Oh my god. Alright. Maybe his tail will be a bit in the video. Today I figured I would talk about the books I read for December. I used to read books a lot as a kid, and this is the first month I've really jumped back into it. I only read 5 books this month, but that's so much more than I have been doing at all. So I'm pretty proud of that, actually. The first book I read in the month of December is called Hannah's Dream. Yeah, it's probably obvious why I picked up this book at the time. It came out in 2008, so it's something that I've been holding on to for pretty much over a decade now. It's one of the books I brought over from the US, and I kind of wanted to start reading those more, so... Why are you staring at me?
No, he's sitting here, Ori.
Oh, he's being a loaf, he's fine. This one is pretty much about an elephant who is at a defunct zoo, and she's had the same caretaker for around like 40 years, just a really long time, but the zoo's original owner died a long time ago, and the money that she left to run the zoo is kind of running out. So the new caretaker is trying drastic measures to try and rebuild the zoo's reputation, but unfortunately she's not exactly keeping up with the care of the animals, so most of the story is kind of about saving this elephant and trying to get her to a better place. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5. I think in my review for it, I described it as like a palate cleanser, which I tend to read a lot of horror books, so it was definitely a big shift from that. It is considered contemporary fiction, but it was kind of a comfort read for me. It's very easy to read. It's considered adult, but like the language isn't difficult. There's like no really flowery writing or anything like that. It's pretty basic. I also think it's the first time I've read a book where an older man was the main character. The main character is in his 60s, I believe. He's an older black man, and the cast of characters is pretty big, and their ages range from just little child all the way up through like people in their 80s. And I really liked that about the book, because everyone's really diverse. Like there's different races, different ages, there's even different sexualities represented. Even though it's kind of a Sappho and her friend situation where it's like, oh, she's just the secretary, but not really. Even though the people live together their entire lives and do literally everything together. The scale that I use for rating the books that I read is the Goodreads scale. It's simple. Most people use Goodreads, so most are going to be familiar with it. Ooh, excuse me. But in case you aren't, a 1 star means that I did not like the book at all. I don't think I've rated anything a 1 star yet. 2 stars is it was just okay, which to me is like the kind of meh category where there isn't really anything special about it to wow me or anything like that. 3 stars is I liked it, so that's just average. 4 star is really liked it, so pretty much just a book that I really enjoyed reading, but maybe there's a few issues with it, or I didn't like the ending to where I was just a little let down maybe. And 5 stars is it was amazing, or I absolutely loved it and just enjoyed the entire ride. Can you please not eat the books? That would be fantastic. He keeps grabbing them and play. Oh wow, teeth marks. Thanks. Thank you so much. A book that would fit the 5-star category for me is the second book I read in December, which is Bunny by Mona Awad. I picked up this book solely based on Books in Lala. Please, stop. He is relentless. Her description of this book was, like, not much, but she said how, like, there's heads exploding and stuff. And I was just like, what? Like, how do you get to that? I'm gonna kind of read a little bit of the synopsis, because the synopsis actually threw me off a bit, and how this book was, I thought, and how I expected this book to go. It says, Samantha Heather Mackey couldn't be more of an outsider in her small, highly selective MFA program at an elite New England university. A scholarship student who prefers the company of her dark imagination to that of most people. She is utterly repelled by the rest of her fiction writing cohort, a clique of unbearably twee rich girls who call each other Bunny and seem to move and speak as one. But everything changes when Samantha receives an invitation to the Bunny's fabled smut salon and finds herself inexplicably drawn to their front door, ditching her only friend Ava in the process. As Samantha plunges deeper and deeper into the Bunny's sinister yet saccharine world, beginning to take part in the ritualistic off-campus workshop where they conjure their monstrous creations, the edges of reality start to blur, etc., etc. That whole first paragraph of the description made it seem like that it was going to be a slow start, where it was going to be about her going to this school, like getting in the scholarship, things like that. That's what I was expecting. Instead, it really gets into it right away. You meet the Bunnies right away. You meet her friend Ava right away. It's one thing I really enjoyed. Like, we do just jump right into the story. You meet all the characters that are going to be through the entire story, like, right away. And I really enjoyed that, because some of these books here had really slow beginnings, and I almost kind of get bored with just nothing happening. And this isn't a particularly long book. It's only about 300 pages, so it just let there be so much content throughout, and just things happening and all the craziness. It gave it time for the craziness to unfold, where it wasn't like, oh, we're 2/3 through this book and nothing has happened yet, like one of the others that I will get to. But I ended up really enjoying this, like, pretty much on the reviews, and I think Books and Lala said this too, is people seem to either absolutely love this book or hate it, and I 100% see why, and I really agree with that assessment, because I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. But there's different ways you can interpret it as well, which I really like. Like, it ends and you're just like, what? Like, what just happened? Like, what is this real? Is it not? Like, what is going on? And so it's something that really sticks with you after you finish reading it. And I think I'll be thinking about this book for a while, and I come back to it every now and then, and it was a good one. I like this one. The third book I read in December is actually for a book club I'm a part of. We read one book a month, and then usually before COVID would meet at the end of the month, but now it's just been like a Zoom meeting. But that book is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is considered historical fiction, and I liked the synopsis of this. I was one of the people that voted for it to be a book that we read for the book club. I was actually pretty excited for it, but unfortunately I was let down in the end. I ended up giving this only 2 out of 5 stars. The synopsis also, like, the synopsis is the entire story, and for me that was the problem of this, is it's supposed to be about Shakespeare's wife and one of his children, Hamnet, and not much in actual history is known about them, so this author pretty much just took the fact that they existed and wrote a story around it, except any tension that that could have been in this book is removed because like we already know what happens at the end in the first few pages of this book. And even in the synopsis, it says, on a summer's day in 1596, a young girl in Stratford-upon-Avon takes to her bed with a fever. Her twin brother, Hamnet, searches everywhere for help. Why is nobody at home? Their mother, Agnes, is over a mile away in the garden where she grows medicinal herbs. Their father is working in London. Neither parent knows that one of the children will not survive the week. Hamnet is a novel inspired by the son of a famous playwright. It is a story of the bond between twins and of a marriage pushed to the brink of grief. So we already know, like, right away in the beginning, Hamnet dies. So starting the story and knowing that there's already the fake out of his sister being sick instead of him, where he's the one that ends up dying, the only question is kind of like, oh, well, how does he die instead of her? That's kind of the only mystery. But there's no tension. There's no build-up of any sort of plot, just because we already know what happens. So you're just kind of reading about, okay, well, how do we get there then? But that journey isn't interesting at all. It's for me, this book suffers from having too flowery of language. Like, it just, like, instead of just describing a place or a feeling or something, it will spend a whole page just saying, like, metaphors for that feeling or metaphors for that place. And for me, that made it drag. It just dragged. The first probably quarter to a third I thought was okay. Like, it's pretty much like a slice of life book for the most part. And I was fine with that. There was nothing wrong with that. But then it's just kind of like, all right, can we get to the point? Cool. And then Hamnet dies. And then you turn the page and it says part 2. And that was, yeah, like, oh my god. I still have all of this book to go, and we're already to where Hamnet is dead. So I really lost my motivation to read. Like, Hamnet dies on, like, page 252, and this goes on to 370 pages. Like, oh my god, why? It just, to me, this wasn't a necessary book to be written. It's not really based on a lot of historical facts. Like, the only historical facts is, this is Shakespeare's wife, this was his son, who died on this day in this year, and that's about all that's true. The fourth book that I read in December is You Must Not Miss by Katrina Leno. This is one of 2 Katrina Leno books that I actually read this month. The second one I was not expecting, but I'll get to that soon. It's YA contemporary, but it's also considered magical realism and horror as well, but I'd say the horror is literally just like a little sprinkle, and that's about it. It's definitely not a strong theme in the book. This one is basically about a girl named Magpie, and she is having a really rough time in her life. Like, her parents are divorcing, she caught her dad cheating with her mom's sister. Like, it's not really spoilers or anything, it's like on the first page of the book. It might even be in the synopsis. Yeah, it's pretty much in the synopsis. But yeah, like, she's lost her best friend, all this stuff has happened in like the span of 6 months. So she retreats to this world that she's created in this notebook, where she's not necessarily like writing a story about it, she's just writing little snippets of things, of how the town would be like, of how she would feel there, things of that nature, and some of it starts to come true. And that's pretty much the main premise of this. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed reading it. Like, I thought it was fine. I wasn't too big of a fan of the ending. And another issue I had is like this cover here. Like, it says, imagine the perfect place, imagine the perfect family, imagine the perfect revenge. So it says it right on the cover, and so I'm like, oh, okay, a main theme of this is going to be revenge. But as I'm reading and reading and reading this book, like, I get like 3/4 through it, and she hasn't even mentioned revenge. And I'm just like, have I completely like misunderstood this book? Did I completely misunderstand like what this story was going to be about? And then the last little bit of the book is revenge, and it sucks because that to me was the most interesting part about this, was seeing what she was going to do to take out her revenge and how that related to everything else that happened in the book. So that kind of is why it's just an okay book for me. Is I did enjoy what I read, but I don't agree with how it was done. I don't think it was done in a way that was the most impactful and interesting to me as a reader. And I'll discuss the specifics of that in the spoiler part of the video. The final book I read in December is also by Katrina Leno, and that is Horrid. This one actually came out this year, and I actually buddy read this with a friend. I'm not sure if she would want me to say her name on here, so I'm just going to be respectful and not say that. But pretty much her and I picked some books from our like want to read list, did a randomizer, and this was the book that popped up, so that's how I ended up with 2 Katrina Leno books this month, which is okay. Like, I don't have an issue with that at all. This one I also heard about from Books and Lala, and I believe Haley in Bookland has probably mentioned this, but I don't think she's read it yet. But I've been really curious about it, and since horror is my favorite genre, it's something I really wanted to check out. This is considered a YA horror and or mystery as well. The gist of this one is the main character, Jane. Her father has just died. She was living in California with her parents, and her mom decides that they're going to move to her family home in Maine instead, that Jane has never heard about before, because her father left them with no money. And this was the best option for them. So they uproot their lives to Maine, and there seems to be some secret that Jane doesn't know about the town, about the house she lives in, and strange things start happening. And that's pretty much all I can say without spoiling anything. It goes into her kind of day-to-day life a bit, and like she gets a job, she makes friends, she likes the school, like things like that. I did end up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I liked it better than the other Katrina Leno I read. I did enjoy the mystery part, because there is kind of a mystery you have to solve to figure out like what the secret is. And I liked the lead up to that. However, I believe the foreshadowing in this book was way too on the nose. Like, since I was buddy reading this, I would literally like take a picture of the page, like circle what they had said and send it to my friend and be like, this is way too much foreshadowing. Like, this is showing like exactly what is going to happen in this book. And I'm not really a fan of that. It's just, I don't like when they make it so obvious that I know this is where things are going, and like the first few pages of the book, or like not even halfway through the book. I really like theorizing in stories, and I was almost exactly right. Like, I had one detail that was wrong because I didn't realize the age of someone, and that was it. Everything else, like, I got right, and I don't really think that generally happens, so I was kind of with how obvious they made the answers in the book. However, I did really enjoy it, and I rather liked the ride, but there are a few other things in the book I wish it had gone deeper in, kind of the same with the other one. Now I'm going to talk about the books, but with spoilers, so I can go into more detail with what exactly I liked or didn't like in these stories. Some of them I'm not really going to have much more to say, just because, like, it was an okay book, whatever. But I just want to put a warning here so you can stop the video if you don't want to hear any spoilers on these books, so please do that. I think I'll actually do this, like, backwards, going from the bottom back up. So I'll just keep going with Horrid. I was not happy with how this ended. This book does suffer from the showing the monster and then it gets less interesting. The end of this book, there is an actual ghost. Like, it is a ghost of the main character's sister that she did not know about and didn't find out until the very end of the book. And instead of it just being like, oh my gosh, there's a ghost, she literally sees the ghost. Like, it's full body apparition, she's manipulating things, she's making the main character do things, and the book literally ends with, like, full on possession. Which, it is a dark ending. It wasn't a happily ever after kind of ending, and I thought that was okay, because obviously it doesn't always have to be a good ending. Or a happy ending, I should say. I hope the ending is good. But I liked the mystery behind what was going on, because you weren't sure at first. Because since the main theme of this book is dealing with grief, you weren't sure at first, like, is this stuff happening because she's going through this huge stressor in life? Like, is that making her see things or imagine things, or is her mom the one that's, like, going crazy a bit? And instead, it's just, no, it is a ghost, which that's fine, but they completely just show it, and also it was the trope of, like, it's a little kid, but they're evil, so that's a little blah. So I really enjoyed it up until the end. There's also could have been a romance in this between the character Jane and Will, who she worked with at the bookstore. Like, I was interested in that. Like, I wanted to see some good things happen with the characters to kind of balance out the craziness and the bad things that were happening, but instead it was mainly just bad things happening one after another. Also, what I mentioned before about the foreshadowing, like, oh my god. So Jane is obsessed with Agatha Christie novels, and they specifically talk about something in one of Agatha Christie's novels where, like, everyone knows a secret that the main character does not, but does not tell the main character. And that is exactly what happens in this book. Like, when I read it, I was like, no, that's what this is gonna be. And oh my gosh, it just bothered me so much. And it wasn't even just that. Like, the main character herself at the end, when she finally knows the secret that everyone else knows but her, she even says that. She's like, oh my gosh, it's like in this Agatha Christie book. And it's just like, yeah, no shit. Like, we knew. And it's kind of revealed that there's a secret right away in the beginning of the book. Like, they're almost to the town, and they go into a bookstore, and the shopkeeper is just like, when she finds out the main character's last name, she's like, oh, like, her complete demeanor changes. She acts like there's something, like, evil that happened there, but won't say anything about it. It's just like, oh, okay, so there's some secret that the main character isn't gonna know, but everyone else is. And then the foreshadowing happens, and it's just like, oh my god, they really beat you over the head with that. So that was something where I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, please stop. Like, let me theorize and figure out what's going on myself a bit, please. Next for the spoiler talk will be You Must Not Miss, also by Katrina Leno. So when I mentioned the revenge doesn't happen until the very end, like, it really doesn't happen until the very end. And once again, for me, like, that was the most interesting part of this story, is how she was gonna get revenge on the people that she felt had wronged her. And it would skim over the details of it as well. Like, she would bring someone into the world that she created, and she would have one of the characters in the world, like, literally eat the person. Like, turn into a monster and eat the person. But once she would bring them into that world, it just skimmed over the details. And I guess it's because it's YA that it did that. But, like, that was the horror part. So, like, I wanted to know more of what happened and stuff. And for me, that was really disappointing. Like, there was all this build up, like, to this moment. And the synopsis and the covers talks about, like, this huge revenge she's going to get on people. And in the end, she just doesn't do much with it. So it made the ending a little bit boring for me, I guess. Another thing that annoyed me in this book is the character that she creates. Like, since everything that Magpie writes down in this journal, it's real, and apparently it's made from her. She creates basically an imaginary, because she's the only one that can see it, a friend that never leaves her. And this thing is just the stereotypical, like, I'm gonna be really sarcastic and I told you so in your head and yada da da da. So I wasn't really a fan of that character at all, because it just seemed like a very stereotypical YA character from when I used to read a ton of YAs as a high schooler. Oh my god. And that was a bit annoying. But hearing, like, the struggles Magpie had to go through and how she handled it and stuff, that was interesting to me. And it also goes through, like, how her mom's handling grief, like with her alcoholism and ending up in the hospital and stuff like that. So, like, I enjoyed reading that, but the payoff just wasn't there for me, which is why this only ended up being, like, an okay read. Next, for the spoiler talk, is Hamnet. Oh, this book. So, Maggie O'Farrell, I believe that's how you say her name, she decided to make Shakespeare's wife, who's she changed the name of. It's spelled like Agnes, but I know it's pronounced differently. But since I read it, obviously every time I saw the name, like, I had to say Agnes. So I'm just gonna call her that because I don't think I can pronounce how it actually is said. My apologies. But the author made Agnes into the character where she is really into knowing the types of herbs and flowers and, like, what she can use to cure people. And she has a falcon and she keeps bees and goes into the woods and does all these weird things that the villagers label her as, like, a weirdo and a witch, and oh my god, you have to stay away from her because she's gonna curse you, kind of thing. And so that was kind of annoying because it was just kind of another, like, huge trope in writing, just put on a character that doesn't really have a history written of her. And also, she literally gave her power. Like, she can tell the future. Like, she knows everything that's going to happen before it happens, kind of thing. And also, if she, like, presses in the part here, like, on a person's hand, the skin here, she can, like, tell their true heart. And so it made it a bit more magical than I was expecting for a historical fiction. And I guess that's kind of how she made it come out of, like, left field that Hamnet died, is because the mom did not see that he was gonna die. But we as readers knew, so it was just kind of like, whatever still, which was kind of annoying. Also, I felt like it really didn't delve into the character's thoughts like I thought it would. Like, it was supposed to be, like, the untold story of Agnes and Hamnet, and it just kind of ended up being really surface level, in my opinion. And it was more focused on, like, the descriptions of the areas, the descriptions of what they were doing. Like I said before, the language is very, very flowery. It's really gets into like describing like what touching stuff felt like, what smells were like, things like that. So it's like a very like sensory description, but not so much on how the characters themselves were thinking, feeling, things like that. And so there never really seems to be any character development, even though it spans like quite a few years in the writing. And I think that's why I just kind of got bored with it and it just felt dull to me, is I just reading all these descriptions and it's like, okay, I really know like the place and how it feels in this place, but I don't really know much about the character. They also never say Shakespeare. They never name him, but like that's who it's supposed to be. And so I thought that was another weird way she was like tiptoeing around the subject, but it's just like, come on, like it's in the description of the book. We know who it is. Next for my spoiler talk is Bunny by Mona Awad. I realized I wanted to say the year these books came out, and I completely forgot. This one came out 2019. Hamnet was 2020. I almost said this year, but it is not 2020 anymore. You Must Not Miss came out in 2019. Jesus. So Katrina Leno wrote a book in 2019 and 2020. Damn, that's fast. I don't think I really have much spoiler talk for Bunny, just because, like, it's such a crazy experience and so much happens. Like, how do you talk about all that? It's just amazing. But the main thing with this book is the ending. You get to the ending, like the last sentence. I love the last sentence of this book. Just that final, just drop in the bucket of craziness was just like, what? Oh gosh, I love it. But the main part with the end of the book is it actually mental illness? Like, was she like schizophrenic? Did she have some mental illness where she imagined all this happening? Or did it actually happen? Or was the magical elements just her story? You can kind of interpret it every way you want because all of them fit. And I kind of like the concept of it being a story within a story, especially when there's a few hints that it can kind of go that way in the book itself, but it's not a possibility I ever thought. Like I said before, I like to theorize in books, but with this one, it was just, I don't know. I just enjoyed the ride, didn't think about much what was going on, because I had no fucking clue where this was going, what was happening, what was true, what was not. I like pretty much every way that you can interpret this book. I'm usually not one for like open-ended things where it's like, oh, we're gonna leave it to your imagination. But this I really enjoyed, and I really want to read her other work. I know there's at least one other book she has, and there's one that comes out this year called All's Well that I definitely want to read as well. I'm not usually into new releases, and that's not something I keep up with, but since I've been watching booktubers, I kind of know a little bit just from that, so that's definitely on my list to read. Not sure if I'll buy it right away, but I'll read it at some point. And lastly for the spoil talk is Hannah's Dream by Diane Hammond. I cannot freaking look at anything or remember anything. I really don't have much spoiler stuff to say about this. The one thing that I thought was really strange in this book, though, is the new zoo caretaker. She finds all of the old zoo caretakers' photos of like her journeys to Africa and things like that, and she decides she's going to become her. Like, she has everyone call her Max, which was, whoa, Torty made a weird noise, which was the name of the previous owner, and has her hair dyed and done like hers, dresses like her, tries to get the persona of her, and decides this is going to be some like live historical event where she's going to do talks at the zoo as Max, And through doing that, she falls in love with Max. Like, there's one scene in the book where she's looking at a picture and she's like, oh my god, like, she realizes she's in love. And it's like, excuse me, what? And I guess, like, the idea of the person, but Max had been dead for like 30, 40 years at this point, and it's just like, what is going on? I thought that was the strangest part of the book, and the part of the book I was just like, I could do without this. This is really strange. There is sapphic representation, which I believe is what you would call it. The character Max, her full name is actually Maxine, but she prefers to be called Max. She wants to be called Sir. Like, she presents herself as a man. So they don't come out and say that she's trans, because she was alive in like the 50s. So it wasn't something that was like widely talked about or accepted or anything. But it's alluded that she would have been trans, like, if she had been alive today. And she spent her entire life with this woman, which everyone said was her secretary, but it ends up being really, really obvious what was going on there. And I just liked that representation. And the main characters, like, never comment that she was presenting herself as a man or that she lived with, like, a woman and stuff. Like, they're so accepting of how she lived her life and think that it was just the coolest and that she was just this awesome person. It's all focused on like what she did for her animals in her zoo and not her sexuality or how she presented herself. And I enjoyed that, and I liked that the cast was diverse like that. It was unexpected. I wasn't really expecting that in this book. And for it to be from 2008 as well, like, it's not something from the past few years, so I just enjoyed that. I did not finish this book in December, but I did start it in December, and this is what I'm currently reading. It is called The Good House by Tananarive Due. I hope I said her name right. I apologize if I did not. I really like that name though. It's cool. And this is a horror novel, or at least I believe so. It is a pretty thick book. It is probably the thickest book I've tried reading since I've started back down that rabbit hole again. I'm currently about 3/4 through. I'm on page 363, and there's like almost 500 pages, I think. Yeah, ish. So this is due on Thursday at the library, so I'm hoping I can finish it in the next few days. But I'm enjoying it so far. But that's one I will talk about in a January review. I just thought it'd be interesting to say what I'm currently reading. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure I was as scatterbrained as the first video. I don't think I waved my hands around as much, at least, and hopefully I didn't say as much, but we'll see when I edit this. There we go, right there. Thanks for hanging out with me though, and I'll see you next time. Bye.